spiritual journey looks so much like a bed of roses, and it's not.
Say that, right? And they're like, man, like, like, hey man, I'm not perfect. You know? I'm still working on me to be able to be transparent. Because man, too often we are to perpetuate the perception of perfection.
You're doing good, and when you're doing for God, a lot of times what happens is that the devil throws darts in your way. And he will even sometimes trip you up to fall down, so people could look at you and be like, is that the same girl that's on the praise team singing? Is that the same guy that was playing the piano? Those type of questions arise in people's minds, especially when you're trying to do things with God. The devil tries to slip you up. But I will tell you, keep on keeping on.
Sometimes we have distorted predictions. God designed our mind to be able to process a potential outcome. That is something that other creatures don't necessarily have the ability to do. We have the ability. That is a God design. Having God's DNA in us, He gave us a fraction of who He is and His ability to see from the beginning and the end. And He allowed us to be able to project with our thoughts, what could the potential outcome be if I XYZ?
Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of Zoom Hope Live. I don't know about you, but we on Zoom Hope Live team, we missed you last week. There was so much going on. We were tired, we were beat, and of course, I was a little bit sick. But we are back on Zoom Hope Live, and we know that it's going to be a great, a thrilling experience this week. And we're just going to jump right into it. You know where to find us, zoomhopelive.org, and you can connect with us on all our platforms, whether it is Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. And by the way, even YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. This guy is still here. We're seeing the subscription. They're moving a little bit, but please. All right, we're gonna subscribe hard this week. So give it right, great. All right, so we're gonna get those subscription up, and we want you to be in tune with all our episodes as they come in. We want to just keep you a part of the family. Please, today we want you to ask your question. If you have your question, please don't hold them up. We want you to ask them, let us know what is on your mind, and of course, post those comments. Today, we're talking about education from the perspective of an educator. And all the persons we have here, they have that hat on as well as educators. So we will have a great time today, and we're going to dive right into it. So let me start by introducing you to our first panelist. And I'm going to start with Pastor Peart, who is here with us. And I am so excited to have you a part of Zoom Hope Live with us. Of course, not just you putting your articles out there through the newspaper, etc., but also being here to talk. And we're excited to hear from you. So, Pastor Peart, welcome to Zoom Hope Live.
Thank you.
All right. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Of course, the engineer told me a lot about you. So that makes me excited. But of course, we want to get the Zoom Hope family also excited. So tell us a little bit about who is Carlisle.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I hail from the parish of Manchester in Jamaica. And I was a teacher for 17 years, taught in 3 different countries, taught in France, Jamaica, and the Bahamas. The greater part of those years I spent in the Bahamas, where I still reside. I currently serve as the associate pastor of Christian education here at Grace Community Church in Nassau, Bahamas.
Right.
And I am I'm married to the lovely Shannon Peart, and I have two kids, a boy,
Right.
Thaddeus, and a girl, Jalissa.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So too, you balance it out well, and Kevon said that you're friends for a long time. So I
Oh, I should
just
have, yeah, I should mention that. Yes, we went to high
yeah,
school, same class for in school, and
right,
then I came to Bahamas and see him again. So
right,
it's
right,
a great
right,
time to
right.
reconnect
Uh,
with a classmate. Well done.
Awesome, awesome,
Yes.
awesome. So we're looking forward to the discussion today. We know it's going to be great. So the next person that I have is just saying Montague. And of course, you have heard her husband. Well, I'm telling you, they say behind every smart husband, there's a smarter wife. All right. So, Mrs. Montague, welcome to Zoom Up Live.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome, awesome. So it's great to have you. We met in school, of course, in university, and I know
hmm
you, I believe, fairly well. But of course, we want the Zoom Hope family to also get this opportunity to connect with who is this personality. So tell us a little bit about yourself,
All right, so I am Jasan Montague. I am also a Jamaican from the beautiful parish of Trelawney.
right?
I currently live in Ontario, Canada. I have been teaching since 2005. I think that would be 16 years.
Yes.
I don't like to say it because I feel old when I say it, but and I'm a high school teacher. I currently teach at the Crawford Adventist Academy. I enjoy it. It's my honor to work with the young people that I currently work with.
Right.
And I just am pleased to be here and to share my thoughts with the
Awesome.
Zoom Hope Life family.
Great, great, great. So we're looking forward to it, and we have a lot in common. We have a son in common. My son's
Yes,
name
yes.
is Kemuel,
Kemuel. Yes, yes.
and your son name is Kemuel. So
Right.
looking forward to that. And there's a twin as well, twin, right?
Yes, I am. Yeah, they are twins. And
Yes,
I'm a twin as well. So,
you're a
yeah.
twin, and I am a twin. Yeah, so there's a lot in common. And guess what? We're looking forward to the discussion.
Yes.
It's gonna be great. Thank you so much. Well, folks, the other person that I am privileged to bring on at this time is someone that I admire a lot. Just to hear him talk and share from time to time. And I'm privileged to hear from him just about every week. And I'm pleased to bring to you Professor Flowers at this time as he is a guest here on Zoom Up Live. So, welcome, Lester, to Zoom Up Live.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Happy Sabbath.
All right, great. Happy Sabbath to you as well. Tell the Zoom Up family a little bit about who is Lester Flowers, so we can connect with you as we, move over into our discussion.
I am the second child out of nine siblings. My the eldest of us is my brother, who is 4 years older than I am.
Right,
We were born in South Andros, Strigsville, South Andros, in the Bahamas.
right,
I, I, my hobbies would include photography and computing. I
right.
am married to I don't know if I could say the former Yvonne Lightborn because she still carries Lightborn in her name.
Right.
Uh, so she is here smiling, of course.
Yes.
Um, oh, and of course, I love children, I guess.
Right. Right.
Oh,
Right.
by the way, we do not have, my wife and I do not have biological children as that goes, or genetic children, whatever. But
Right.
as
So
you do
many.
know, we have many.
Right, right, right. So many, including my two. As soon as I go in front of the computer screen, one of the questions always come to me is Sister Flowers there?
Yes.
right? Because
Yes.
she's the only one in Zoom. Right? All right,
Yes.
so we're looking forward to the discussion today. We know it's going to be great. So, folks, you have met the panelists, and we're going to dive into that a little bit. So, we want to know where you're watching from. Remember, please, we sluck off last week because we could not be here, but we want the family to join back. So, please share so that we can join. Oh, my brother Luke from Canada, and that's blood brother. That's blood brother Luke Green from Canada is on joining. It's good to see you, bro. So we're gonna dive into it, but just before we are going to listen to "I'm Alive" from K. Anthony, and then we will.
First thing in the morning, I give thanks for another day. I smile, though I don't have no money. I won't let that faze me, 'cause I'm so grateful for life and another chance. I'm gonna go through my day with a beautiful smile, even when things ain't going my way. I'm thankful for the gift of life, gonna share that smile, it will never ever fade away. I'm alive, in spite of all my struggles. I'm alive, won't be drowned by my sorrows. I'm alive, yeah, gonna live like there's no tomorrow. Hey, 'cause today is all I have. Ha. Work hard every day for me and my family. It's rough, but I gotta make it. Right now, can't hesitate. My time will come, and I'll be a better man. I'm gonna go through my day with a beautiful smile, even when things ain't going my way. I'm thankful for the gift of life, gonna share that smile, it will never ever fade away. I'm alive, in spite of all my struggles. I'm alive, won't be drowned from my sorrows. I'm alive, yeah, gonna live like there's no tomorrow. Woo! 'Cause today is all I have. I'm gonna live today. Come on! I'm gonna live. I'm gonna go through my day with a beautiful smile, even when things ain't going my way. I'm thankful for the gift of life, gonna share that smile, it will never ever fade away. I'm alive, in spite of all my struggles. I'm alive, won't be drowned by my sorrows. I'm alive, yeah, gonna live like there's no tomorrow. 'Cause today is all I have.
Today is all I have. I'm alive and I'm gonna live it, right? So one of the best way to live it is to make sure that you educate yourself. And this month we have been focusing all month long on education as we move out of mindful meditation to now education. And we are gonna jump right into it. And Jason, I'd like for you to, give us a kickstart as it relates to the question, the discussion point here. What is your philosophy of education, and how did your philosophy of education develop? And um, then, who or what shape your philosophy of education? Take us into the discussion.
Alrighty, thank you so much. My philosophy of education is quite simple. For me, education is for the entire or the holistic development of an individual. So for me, the goal of education should be to prepare the individual not only for service here on earth, but for service, in God's kingdom. So therefore, education should cater to the development of an individual, not just academically, but physically, socially, and of course, spiritually. There are many young people, not just young people, there are many people in general who may be very brilliant. They may be academicians and, very, very philosophical, can answer every question. They can quote from Aristotle and Socrates. But if you ask them to complete a common sense task, they are unable to do so. So for me, education facilitates the entire development of a human being. It not just focuses on one area, but ensures that this person is holistically developed and is able to, adjust to all areas of life. Not just one area, but is able to function effectively. And the mind also is prepared for service in the kingdom above. How did I, come to this philosophy? Well, it didn't always start there. Growing up, I always thought that to be educated meant that you had, to have all these letters behind your name. You had to go to university, to all these things. And that was the only way in which you would be seen as fully educated. But then I grew up, and then I had children, and then I also started teaching. And then I realized that education, focuses on the full person. And so I try in my classroom to not only try to complete the curriculum, but to ensure that my students are able to function as citizens here in Canada. They are able to complete, simple tasks that may not necessarily be curriculum related, but they're things that they may need to be able to function in the everyday world. So my philosophy has been shaped by my experiences, by those around me, and by needs I see in my classroom that I then have to cater my own philosophy to. So to put it in a nutshell, my philosophy is one that believes that the entire individual has to be catered to for one to be seen as truly educated.
All right, thank you so much. I was facing some technical difficulties just now, but I got the last part of you where you're saying your philosophy of education, it has to deal with the whole being in terms of the individual must be holistically the educated.
Right.
Uh, Great, great. Thank you so much. So Carlisle, what's your philosophy?
Um, Very interesting. I want to say that I became a teacher by default. Uh, when I finished college, I needed a job so I could repay my student loan. So I'm teaching. I mean, two jobs came up, but they slipped through my fingers. So the next best thing was teaching. And so, of course, at the time, I had no philosophy of education. So as I started teaching, I realized over a period of time, I slowly began to shape what I thought in my mind should be my philosophy of education.
Hmm.
And of course, I started believing, with I still believe it, that the single most important entity in any educational institution is the student. Some teachers may not agree with me. They'll say, "What?" You say, but I believe that the student is important, and we should always hold their interest at heart.
Right,
My duty as an educator is to serve them, to nurture them, and to
right,
preserve a generation of good, upstanding citizens, not just of their community or their own country, but in the world on a broader spectrum.
right.
And then, of course, I believe, like, I realize in my years teaching that learning is like constructing a house. If you have the money, you build it quickly. If you don't, you take it bit by bit. You build a room here, you move in, they add the bathroom, they add this. So it's the same way I realize that not every student will get the material one time. You say it now in class, and somebody gets it quickly, it's gone. But then you realize there's those children you have to take your time, and you have to go home and sometimes at night I'm sleeping and a thought comes in my head how to relay this thing to the student. So I realized, I have to be patient, because to do that you have to have patience. All right. And of course it requires time and motivation. And I like what Jusan said about the
Right.
holistic part of it, because I also believe in integrity. We have a
Right.
lot of people who are educated, but they have no scruples about them.
Right.
Absolutely no scruples. And that's why we see, for example, in the legal profession, you have lawyers who are being hauled before the courts because they have
Right.
no integrity. And you
Right.
have accountants as well, and bankers, and everybody, I mean, from different professions being hauled before the courts because they have no scruples. So it's more than just giving them the academics. It's
Right.
about making sure the whole man, the whole person is completely, fully developed.
Right.
And another thing I found during my time in teaching and to mold, of course, my philosophy I keep adding as I go along each year. For
True.
17 years in the profession, obviously, it's going to expand. I
Yes.
realize that my role as an educator is to help students discover their own uniqueness. As a believer, I
Yes.
believe that we are fearfully and wonderfully made by God.
Right.
So if I can help each student to develop and discover their uniqueness, their awesome capacity, and of course, their responsibility in order for them to make a worthwhile contribution to society. It's very
Hmm.
important, it's critical. And of course, in doing so, they automatically develop a love of learning, which eventually make them lifelong learners. They want to learn, right? They want to study, not just a degree, but they'll go to a seminar. They will attend a workshop, or they just do a course here and there because they just love to read and they want to research for fun as
Right.
well. And of course, another thing is for them to be responsible stewards of the environment that God has placed us in. So they realize that, listen, I can't just throw garbage anywhere because it's going to affect us in this world at some point in time. And
Right.
then, of course, um, in my years teaching, again, philosophy is building up. I believe in honest evaluation, both written and verbal. That's
Right.
key. That's key to the whole teaching process. You need to Students need to know that they're being evaluated fairly and squarely, and not because you were rude to me, I'm going to take off some marks off your paper,
Right.
or because you showed me some attitude. No, I need to mark you fairly and squarely. And that's important because that also shows that I have integrity.
Right.
And the students realize that, listen, I don't just say it, but I preach it, but I also live it. All right.
Right.
I give you what you deserve. So it's important. So that in its sense is teaching them also honesty as well. And they will learn that, hey, it's important. They develop the art of analyzing and constructively criticizing persons
Hmm.
or scenarios with a view to make sound recommendations as well. And of course, um, it's always important to let the students know why they're learning what is being taught and
Right.
how that will become applicable to them in
Yeah.
life. Why am I
Yeah.
learning this? Um, because if I don't see the end goal in mind, then I might as well not learn it. So that's basically what my philosophy of education
Right.
is.
Right. Right. And
And of course, what shaped this? after having grown up, I realized I've had some great teachers, but I've also had some bad ones who left a sour taste in your mouth. And you
Right.
want to make sure that you don't do the same thing. You don't leave the same taste that you experience as a student in
Right.
somebody else's mouth. You want to make sure that, hey, at the end of the day, they can say you are fair, you are square with dealing
Right.
with me and all of that. So,
Right.
and what shape it? Again, the bad teachers and the good teachers. I took from the good teachers
And the
what
bad.
was good, and the bad one, I try not to replicate what they did.
Right.
And of course, the great master teacher himself, Jesus.
Hmm.
All right, when I studied him, I realized that he was an excellent teacher. He was very pragmatic, and he used examples. He was very
Does.
simple, right? His style was very simple, but at the same time, he didn't use language that they didn't know. All right. At the same time, he didn't even dumb it down so that the people who are listening felt unintelligent. Like, why you insulted my intelligence? No, it
Right.
was simple. And they realized he also used examples that was great to them. And also, I realized, using studying Jesus as well, I realized, hey, this guy is a master teacher. Look at
Right.
how he communicated with the people around him. Look at how he
Right.
taught them.
Right.
So that shaped my
Yeah.
philosophy as well.
Yeah. Definitely. That's I listened intently, and it's really powerful. From the point where you related that the philosophy, your philosophy is about the children, is the most important in the room, and to where you end, where you're related to Jesus, and that's how Jesus sees all of us within his classroom as the most important, and of course the holistic development that you have related to, like Jason. So let's hear from you, from the professor in the house. Um, What's your philosophy of education,
My
with flowers?
my philosophy of education is
Right.
summed up in the verse found in Luke 2:52, and I will add to that Ephesians 4:13. And I'm not trying to be spiritual here, but this
That's
is
all
the
right.
truth. This
Yes,
is the truth.
that's right.
And Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. Three, you know, um, my sister who began the discussion talked about education being holistic.
Right,
We have that right here in this verse. He had wisdom, he had stature, and he increased in favor with God and man. That is truly my philosophy. It's well down to that. I will
right,
quote Ephesians chapter 4, verse 13, because it says, till we all come in the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, unto a perfect man, unto the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. That's
right,
it when it comes
right.
to my philosophy. I'm sorry that I'm maybe sang so
Oh,
blunt, but that's it for me. I truly, and that wasn't something, this is something that
mhm.
this text, Luke 2:52, I came across very early in my life and at a young age, and it really impacted my life. The
Right,
other aspect of the questions asked, how did your philosophy of education develop? But through my background and through my experience, and of course, my background and experience was founded on the Bible. I was raised by my maternal grandparents, and if I asked them a question, and if the answer to that question could be discovered by my effort,
right,
they would provide me the materials and the instruction, and I would be allowed to carry out find out the answer. Um, and when that was impossible, then they would, where it can be demonstrated, they would demonstrate it for me.
right,
Let me give you an illustration with that. I grew up right on the water with my grandparents. So my grandparents are farmers, were farmers. My fishermen. And my grandfather went out and took me out one day, just he and I. Um,
Yes.
and he took me out one day and he showed me how to um, dislodge a crawfish out of the rock in which it was hiding, out of the hole in which it was hiding.
Hmm.
I've never even tried doing that. But that was something that he thought I should know. And so forth, he demonstrated. I could not do it, so he demonstrated. I
Right.
wanted to know where Irish potato came from. They, when I asked the question, how did Irish potato grow? They took a potato, an eye off the potato, told me to plant it, and I was to take care of it. And I saw it grew up, and I'm still asking them, where is the potato? And when they knew that it was, there was potatoes, they asked me to pull it up, and I pulled it up, and lo and behold, there was the potato. So truly, my grandparents developed my philosophy of education. And of course, that was carried over by my parents when I went to live with my parents. It was the same thing. My parents had a rule that the oldest person at home was the person in charge. And when my parents returned home, that was the individual that was to give an account to them, only that individual. So that is how my philosophy of education developed. So I've already said who shaped my philosophy. Uh, um, my grandparents, and my parents. Um, Teachers come in third. Truly, teachers come in third, and that's really far away in terms of that. My grandparents and my parents.
Right, right, right. No, here comes the other part of this discussion, and maybe you could just follow through, Professor Flowers, in this, right? Because actually, yesterday I was in conversation with my mentor, Dr. Joseph, Peter Joseph, and we're talking about education as his degree touches that area. And he was saying, well, in education, you have pedagogy, yeah, and you have andragogy. Pedagogy is that the teacher actually comes with the information and gives the student. But he said with andragogy is that the teacher comes with the perspective that the student have, and we are going to mutually learn. And in that dynamic, the teacher teaches what the student is excited about or what interests the student. So I just thought I'd throw that in as you relate to this discussion right here, and we're looking forward to see your comment, folks, as well as your question. So here we go. How was your philosophy, that philosophy that you have shared? In fact, before you read a part of that text in Ephesians about the perfection, the result of being educated. But before that, it talks about the different areas or the different schools, the vastness in terms of persons who
Yeah.
will develop and become to this level. So, how has your philosophy of education impact the lives of others?
Um, I think just by my nature again, I'm a helper by nature.
Right,
I'm a perfectionist by nature, but I'm also drawn to the vulnerable. That's how I am. And again, for illustration, uh, you know, I can recall I was probably about 11 years old. We were coming home, I and my neighbors, and they wanted us to throw stones at a family who were going home from school, going in the
right,
opposite direction. And I told them no. Okay, Jesus increase in wisdom and the stature and favor in God. Man, you can't throw
right,
stones at them. No,
right.
and they did not throw stones at them. That's for me ways of doing so. I hope that there would be an opportunity for me to share later on how um, my wife and I have gotten involved in the lives of the many children that we have,
Mhm.
etc., and try to show how being involved with their lives are important. But for me, I go, I am drawn to the vulnerable. So if I have students in my classes, or well, that individual that I shared with was not even in the same school that I was attending. I was yet about 11 years old. But if I have students, I'm going to look for the weaker students, and I'm going to try and get them to understand. As you said, um, my my approach is you come. Um, I am not going to give you the information.
Right.
You come, and I will help you to understand that information. I have been um, having, as it were, um, AY when I was again in my early teens.
Right.
I would go to, um, when I was about 8.5 years old, I came to live with my parents, and then I would go back to my grandparents, who really were my parents. Um, I would go back to my grandparents, and when I went back there, I would hold um, Sunday schools for the children, and I would share with them what I had learned, and they were, some of them my age, some of them, most of them younger. So,
Mhm.
like I said, I hope later on I'll have the opportunity to share more specifically
Right.
in terms
Right.
of present
Right.
um, age.
Definitely, definitely, and I appreciate where you're bringing education from. And of course, you're not yet in the classroom. You have not related to the classroom setting. So here's it that you are actually targeting education from a different level, not just from the level of being a quote unquote educator, but being a human being that contribute to the lives of others. That's profound. Jason and then Carline, but you could just share whoever want to go now. How was your philosophy actually impact the lives of others?
All right. So, what are the things I have done? Because for me, because of my philosophy, I have taken onto myself the idea that teaching for me should be a ministry.
Right.
So, I asked God, I really had a talk with God, and I said, God,
Hmm.
I want my teaching to not just impact these kids and prepare them to go to university. I want to
Right.
impact their lives. And I have seen where God has opened up opportunities at
Mhm.
my school where I am able to, have guidance classes with these kids to just talk to them about everyday living. I have had kids, ask me things about the Bible, share deep things with me. I've been able to guide them through some difficult moments. I've had kids who have graduated and have maintained this relationship with me that, I am intimately involved in their lives over the years. And
Right.
for me, this is even more important than just teaching per se. It's how do I impact these students so that they are able to know the Jesus I know. And so I see every day as I go into the class an opportunity to just be real with the students. Sometimes as teachers, we seem to think that, yes, we are in the authoritative position, but these are real kids who have real issues who need us to be real with them. We
Right.
were once their age. So I
Yes.
think for me, being real with them has opened up many other opportunities to be able to delve into other issues and to facilitate healing in other areas of their lives because
Right.
I'm real with them. So I would encourage teachers out there, be real with the kids, reason with them one to one,
Right.
and you will be surprised to see the results at the end.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Um, like Jusan, I do believe that it's more than just chalk and talk. You need to, the students need to see a different side of you, right?
Demonstration.
So, in all my time, in all my years teaching, probably except for France, where because they're very secular. But in Jamaica and the Bahamas, the Christian faith is alive and active. Um, they saw me conduct assembly, do devotions, and I always pray with them. So they realize that listen, I I'm not just talking about God. I'm living my faith out in school. They're
Right.
seeing that as a part of that. Um, I think, but this question though is a very good question. But I think the best person to really answer this would probably be the students,
Right.
for them to
Right.
say how you have impacted them.
Right.
But nevertheless, I do believe that for me, I remember spending all my break and lunch times in my classroom. All right. I would only pop in the staff room to use the bathroom, and probably if you have a staff meeting, they're like, "Period, you're always in the classroom." Well, the latter
Right.
year, because um, for most of the years, the kids were there and they wanted to talk, and they're not just talking. They have real issues. They have
Right.
real issues that they would never even tell the guidance counselor,
True.
um, because they don't necessarily is they don't necessarily trust them to say to them, um, where the kids would say because they are going to report it to the office. And I remember my last principal said to me, Carlisle, I know you are very pastoral, but you also need to make sure that we are aware of what's going on in students' lives. I said, as long as I am obligated to report if a child is about to do harm to him or herself or to anybody else,
Right.
I'm obligated to do that.
Yes.
So naturally, I will always let them know, hey, I've been the go-between. I use myself as a go-between with teachers because sometimes teachers, sadly, sometimes we don't know how to relate to students. So some of us in
Right.
high school, I taught in a high school setting, and we forget that we were once teenagers, and they go through issues. All right, they
Right.
go through issues, and I remember I had to go between because a child, when I learned this particular child was going through a lot, the mom was going through chemotherapy. I had no idea this child, his mommy, had cancer, and I mean, lots of people were pressuring him for work, and I found it. I was like, why didn't you say something?
Right.
You know? And I said, I'm gonna go on your behalf. You ain't asked me, but I'm gonna do it because I believe that there needs to be a break here. The human side must kick in. It's not just the academics, great, amazing, but if we forego the right and the here and now, then you will have a broken adult in life. You're gonna have
Hmm.
a broken adult. So you have to fix right now and be there. They want a listening ear as well. Another thing I found out with the philosophy is that let them see that you also have a fun side to you.
Right.
So at school, I would take part in wacky days. I dress up wacky as well and do all stuff. So they're seeing you live out your philosophy and living this out as you're a human being and you're being real with them. And they get to see a different side of you, that you're down to earth and you can be reached. You're not just up there and they're down here. No, you can be reached. You're still a human being and you can be reached.
So the aspect of availability is important. So education cannot take place in a vacuum. Basically, that's what I'm getting from everyone here. So it must take place in an atmosphere where we want to communicate then to the needs of the student, not just to impart what we know.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about access in terms of not being in the staff room. And the moment you said that,
Mm-hmm.
Carlisle, I start to think back, right, on
Mm-hmm.
some of my teachers growing up, right? There was always a classroom, but that desk to the front of the class, or in the back of the class, I can recall, I have teachers who are always there, even though they have a staff room. And one thing that we would have the opportunity of doing was to, outside of the regular, what you call it, the teaching part, right? There's a proper name there, right? Outside of that, we have access to go to the teacher and to talk about issues. There are times that there are teachers who would just call us just to talk to us. Larry, come. And you thought that you did something wrong, but it's just to ask you a question out of the blue about your life, your lunch, etc. And I know going to school many times without lunch, there are many teachers who just call me to their desk and send me for lunch. Right? They realize lunchtime comes and I'm still sitting around. They call me and they realize what's happening and they just send me for lunch by giving me something to go get some food to eat. So that kind of access, I believe it's important. And what it does, and Ellen White actually alludes to it. And um, she said human mind is brought into communion with the mind of God, the infinite with the infinite. In this communion is found the highest education.
Yes.
And
Yes.
this point here, I believe it is profound because I got that in a government system, um, from teachers, where by the way they relate to me, I was able to connect with the mind of God. Because
Yes.
there are many times students come into the classroom of life and also in the physical classroom, whether it is at the university level or down to the kindergarten level, that they have gone through so many traumas, so many situations,
Hmm.
and
Yes.
unless the teacher who is given that high responsibility of connecting the mind to the mind of God so that child can receive that higher education, it will not happen. And I have experienced that because coming from my home sometimes, my parents try the best, do their best, but sometimes, you know you leave home but you're hungry, right? And that teacher actually allow him or herself to really see your pain, connect with you. It opens you now to not only learn from the normal science, biology,
Hmm.
etc., the classroom stuff, but you learn to see that, guess what, this human being is concerned about me. And when you see that this human being is concerned about you, then you can connect to the mind of God. Very, very powerful. Elder
May,
Flowers,
may,
wanted
yeah,
to,
may I?
yeah.
Um, I did the same thing. I taught. I'm presently teaching at the University of the Bahamas, but I taught for 1 year at a high school.
Hmm.
And in that high school, I was the homeroom teacher for one of the lowest grades. You had like an grade um,
Yeah,
9A, 9B, 9C,
right,
all that sort of thing. And I'm teaching way down there at that bottom level. The homeroom teacher for that bottom level. I graduated. That high school was my alma mater.
right.
I went when I went back. I would spend all of the breaks. I went into the teacher's lounge in the
Hmm.
morning to say good morning. I went into the teacher's lounge at the end of the day to say good day, goodbye, etc. All of my time was spent with my students. Um, I mentioned that one of my hobbies was photography. I started photography from high school, so I just had these
Hmm.
long, a huge number of pictures that I've taken in the slide, that you can put in the projector,
Right,
and
right.
I would spend all of that time just showing that to them, expanding their minds, etc., on places where I have been. And by this time, I had been to a few countries and many of the states in the United States, and I'm just showing this to them, um, and open up their minds. I wanted out of that in that class that particular class, I had a student who I looked at her, assessing her, and I said to her, we have exams where they take BJC exam, yeah, BJC exams, etc. And I said to the student, I want you to concentrate on one subject. I want you to concentrate on health science. Don't
Right.
worry about any of the other any other course, just health science.
Mm-hmm.
After teaching just for a year, I went on to grad school.
Right.
I had come home for vacation. I don't know how many years later, but I come home for a vacation. I'm driving my vehicle down the road, and I just heard, "Mr. Flowers, Mr. Flowers, Mr." And so the student, I stopped, and she said, "I did it, I did it." And I'm looking at the student. I remember her name, etc. Um, and I'm saying, "What did you do?" She said, "I passed health science. I passed health science." And
Amazing.
then she went on to do a few other BJCs which she passed. I don't know if she was an Adventist at that time, but I can tell you that she's an Adventist now. So I
Right.
believe I played a role in her life in that way. Um, I, as educators, even at the university level, as
Mhm.
educators, as you've said, we need to, as the other panelists have said as well, we need to cater to the whole person. We
Right.
need to be able to show compassion. We
Mm.
need to be able to see a person crying and that affect us. We can't do it now, but I can tell you of stories where I've actually hugged students, male and female,
Right.
and say, "What's happening? What's going on?"
Right.
And students telling me this is the what the situation is, and
Right.
assisting where I I was able to assist.
Yes, yes, definitely. So, Carlisle and Justin, both of you are in the high school system, and maybe in that system, what Lester has just said is very much a part of that, where you have the stages, right?
Right.
You're in a certain class, you're led to feel that you're not as smart as those in A and B, right? Right. So, how do you relate to this? Bearing in mind what Roseanne is saying, Rose Palmer is saying here. One way to be effective in the classroom, one must focus on the student learning and adjust teaching strategies in response to the pace and depth of the student understanding. What's your two on this?
Um,
For okay. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
okay. If you remember, I said I believe that learning is like building a house,
Hmm.
right?
Remember that.
Where if you have the money, you build it quickly. All right. So it's the same thing. If you don't have the money, you have to go brick by brick, room by room until it's finished. It's the same thing with teaching. You can't run along. Some students are going to get it at one go. One
Right.
go. You come in the class right now and you say it and it's done. It's done. They get it. But there are others that you will have to, sometimes you have to sit next to the student or stand next to the student, all
Right.
right, and let them know, or you put their desk right next to yours and say, listen, I want you to be right next to me because I want you to pay attention. And
Yes.
because sometimes when they're slow, they tend to give trouble.
Right.
And that's to compensate for their, because they're slower. All right.
Right.
It doesn't mean they're not smart. They're
Right.
slower. So they tend to misbehave. So if you put them beside your table, and I
Hmm.
always say to them, you are my VIP. So you're going to sit next to me. Okay. You're my
Right.
VIP. And they understand that. That means you're a very important person. And it has a positive, it doesn't have a negative thing. It's very positive. You reassure them it's very positive. I just want to make sure that you get it. Now, not only that, in my entire years teaching Jamaica and in the Bahamas, I've always done extra lessons for free. I remember when I was at Monroe College, I taught at Monroe for 3 years. I would be up and I live on campus, a boarding school. So I was up in the night teaching.
Right.
I taught in the day, but in the night as well, you're teaching because some kids are a little bit slower, so they take a little bit time to get it.
Right.
And you review the material to make sure that they get it. The same thing like in the Bahamas. I've taught on a Saturday, on a Sunday. And then what I do, I separate students because sometimes, like in the Bahamas here, you have core and extended. Students who are doing core, they don't want to mix with the extended students because then they
Right.
may feel a little bit awkward. So I have to separate them, and it's for free. So
Right.
on a Saturday, I'll be missing from home for 6 hours because you're doing this to make sure that they catch up and they can do they can pass and feel a sense of accomplishment because naturally that builds their confidence and that
Right.
you take the time out and listen, I'm telling you, they will never forget you. They remember that you sacrifice, you're
Right.
doing this for them,
Right.
and it's not a monetary value because money can't pay you. One, the salary they pay you as a teacher is a joke.
Right.
It's
Right.
really a joke. All right. So you do this because you love it and you want to see them
Mhm.
excel and
I,
you feel that joy, that
true.
accomplishment. Listen, I helped one student. I
Right.
helped that one to do so
Yeah.
and so. I feel good.
I can connect with you because right now their teachers literally. I can go back to grade 3 that I remember. A teacher, and I wish I could see her. I don't know what happened to her. I don't know, right? But I can recall those times where you see she placed an extra emphasis in an area that I just don't get. But she, can you wait after school, and take me to the table and go through that. And it's important. So the next day you're in class and you're like so smart, but it's
Yes.
because the teacher actually take the time to slow down to inculcate to you that which is necessary for you to strive in his or her classroom. Very, very deep. Jasan, you're saying.
Yes. For me, especially with teaching now in a pandemic, last year when we all had
Yes.
to, go online, it was a struggle, and a lot of the students really fell behind because, lots of things are going on. Many of them were scared, many of them had anxiety, many of them, their parents lost their jobs, so they were dealing with all of those issues.
Right.
And a lot of them, there was even this child that said to me, Miss, I have no problem failing this year. I have absolutely no problem failing, this year. I'll redo this year. And I realized that, this was a brilliant young man, but he had just given up.
Right.
And I got in touch with the parents, and I realized something else was going on. Um, and I called him one day and I said, listen up, here's what we're going to do. We're gonna have classes, just you and I, in the evenings after school. I'm gonna call you on Zoom, and we're gonna go through this, and sometimes we have to be willing to make modifications. I said to him, all right, you are behind in 10 assignments, all of 10. Here's what's gonna happen. If you can do 5,
Right.
if you can do 5 and demonstrate to me that you can understand these concepts, you'll pass the course. No, what I think sometimes as teachers we struggle with is, as was said by the viewers comment, we tend to think that assessment can only happen in one modality. We
Right.
were trained, in university that everybody has to sit an exam, and if you can't pass the written exam, something is wrong with you. And so many kids leave dejected because they may not be able to sit through a written exam. But hey, they can draw it, they can write the content in a song, they can do a presentation, a PowerPoint, a Google slide, they can do an animation. Why is it that we think we have to be tied down to one type of assessment? And the pandemic has opened my eyes because I've seen my students do some creative things. The
Mhm.
other day we were in class and a student wrote a beautiful song that had everything that we were discussing in class.
Right.
Now, if you were to compare her song with another student who was probably able to complete the exam, that person, passed in the same way as she would have passed
Right.
because of her song. So we have to realize that our students are different. Not
Right.
everybody is going to excel in a written exam.
Hmm.
Some may be able to draw it, some may be able to sing it, some may be able to dance it, but we
Right.
have to be willing to be flexible and
Right.
to adjust our teaching strategies and our assessment strategies
Right.
so that we are able to ensure that all our students excel and leave our classrooms feeling that they are able to do something with themselves.
Right, right. And I really appreciate you even relating to the pandemic, right? I start school Monday in the pandemic, right? But it's very important because take for example, I was sitting with one of my child in her classroom this week, and she was doing a quiz uh, on quizzes thingum, right? So while she was doing it, she was there enjoying it, and she was clicking all the right answers, and she was just so excited. So she started to move fast, right? And in the process of moving the mouse, she clicked the wrong answer, and she was like, "Daddy, I get that wrong, but that's okay, right?" So she said that to me, right? And afterwards, she said to the teacher, "Well, I mistakenly pressed and I got the wrong answer, right?" Um, so those are little things that teachers have to be mindful of. That there are a lot of variances that are on the other side of the screen, even the virtual situation, that impacts the child, and knowing that um, can go a long way in terms of working out assessment. You're realizing that certain things are not being posted on the learning hub at the right time. It might be that the child don't know how to do it, and also the parent don't know how to do it. It might be that perhaps the book smartest person in the house is a child. So there are a lot of things that the teacher can bring into the classroom with a different mindset on how to address that. With that in mind, the question on my mind here is at what point that education actually begins for an individual, and and even to take it a little bit further, in the life of the child, who is their first teacher or educator? Any one of
Okay.
you could take a first bite.
Um,
Yeah, go ahead,
I,
Carla.
I do believe that education starts from the womb,
Right,
because a mother who sings to the baby is hearing the voice, and hearing the words and hearing everything at the same time. The baby recognizes voices,
right.
and I've proven that myself as a daddy. When the baby
Yeah,
came out and I spoke, the baby, calm, you want to listen. Oh, I know this voice. I know this voice. I recognize this voice. I've heard this voice all along while I was inside the womb. So I
right,
I truly believe that that's where it starts. Of course, I'm looking through my worldview, my lens. I'm looking through is a spiritual. It is from the Bible, where I believe. I don't believe like people saying the fetus is not a person. I do believe from there it is a person. So
right,
that's why I'm saying that it starts from the womb.
right,
Um, and I believe naturally that the first teachers or the first teacher obviously is the home.
Yes.
That's where it
yeah,
is the home. Um, that's where the child is going to learn to respect authority, right? The Bible tells us plainly in Proverbs, train up a child in the way he should go. So when he's old and grown, he will not depart from the way. Now, if you allow the child to get away with murder at home and the child does foolishness, then
right.
when the child goes to school, the child will be a terrorist in school. The
Yes,
child will be always in the office. No teacher, I should say no teacher, teachers struggling to say, I don't want this child. This child is really a disruptive element. Um, and it's a problem. So it starts from the home where both parents, if it's a single parent home, the parent must, you parents cannot be the children's friend. Parents cannot
True.
be their children's friend because you have to correct them. You have to
Right.
tell them when they're wrong. So it starts from home. And Deuteronomy 6 tells us plainly where God says, listen, teach them,
Right.
teach them. It says, you shall teach them diligently
Diligently.
to your children all the things. Talk about him when you lie down, when you get up, along the road, wherever. Talk about constantly. They need to
Right.
know. They need to know what respect is. So when they're home, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, miss, or yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, no, ma'am. They need to know these things. Please, thank you. They learn those at home. They need to learn to respect authority. So when they go outside and they meet the police officer, or they
Mm-hmm.
meet the teacher in the classroom, or they meet the pastor church, or any adult, they understand that, hey, I need to have respect.
Amen.
That's where it's.
Wow, 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 wow. That no, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I really do. Even when you go back on Deuteronomy 6, there are a lot of things flooding, but let the panelists speak. Go ahead, Ella Flowers.
Yeah, there is a true story of a baby boy who was born premature, but during the pregnancy,
Hmm.
the sister sang to the baby.
Hmm.
The baby's in the womb, sang to the baby. And when the baby was born, as I said, he was born premature, he was put into an incubator. And the parents, realizing that the baby would die, um,
Right.
and realizing the connection that the sister had with the baby, asked the hospital to please allow the sister to come in and see the baby boy. And when she went in, the song that she sang while he was in the womb, she sang that song to her brother. The entire family went home that day.
Mm,
Wow,
amazing.
So
Wow.
yes,
wow.
the
From the
baby
womb.
education begins from the womb.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes. And that's true. That's a powerful point, and we can't walk away from it.
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Education begins in the womb. And we have to be, that's why we have to be very careful what we say, when we say it, how we say it. Even when the
Right.
baby's in utero, we tend to think that, oh, we can wait until they get up. But when the baby is born, the baby is already born with a certain personality,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
With my twins, one came out very quiet and one was like, oh my goodness. Whew. And
Right.
it took some work, right?
Right.
But we have to start from in utero, and when
Right.
the child comes out, the parents are the first teachers
Right.
in the home. The parents have to guide them,
Right.
instruct them in the way they need to go. And while the child will be, exposed to church and to school and all of those other elements, the parents are
Hmm.
responsible for laying the foundation. And
Right.
once there's a
Yes.
good foundation, the Bible says, train them up, and when they're old, they
Will not.
will not depart. Doesn't mean that they won't stray, but the foundation would have been laid and the principles would have been inculcated in the mind.
Right.
So they will always be there and they will be able to guide them through their lives.
Right.
Amen.
Right. I want to contend, right? And this going back to you, Pastor Peart, what
Mhm.
you have said in Deuteronomy 6. I want to contend that true education is intergenerational. And and the power behind this is in the text.
Mm-hmm.
When you see, and these commandments that I have given you today are to be in your heart. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk on the road, when you lie down, when you get up. Tie them as a symbol on your hand and bind them on your forehead. Write them on the door frames of your house and on your gates. And when you study this, right, you'll see talk about the gates is talking out. That's really out in the city
Mm-hmm.
because the houses back then they didn't have gates like how we have gates now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not the way to understand it. It's
Yes.
talking about the city gate.
Yeah, exactly.
So when we think about true education, it's a corporate experience that even the parent, the mother carrying the child, should not have to say, "Well, this is only for me alone, so I can speak proper life over my child." You know, the pastor in the community, that uncle, that aunt, those persons must be able to begin that process of speaking that life over that child from there. And even when that child is born, if you look at it, right,
Mm-hmm.
while there's significant influence in the home, in fact, research shows that parents are children are more likely to live out the faith of their parents,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the true research. But there are so many instances where the homes are in shambles and the parents are, the biological parents are not proper influence. That's when the community is important. You talk about um, Elder Flowers, where I going back into the church phase, Professor, right? I'm saying Elder Flowers, but Professor Flowers, you talk about your wife and yourself, who, though not biological parents of any person together, right? You talk about the influence that you have in the life of other persons. So, for learning to be effective, the entire community
Hmm.
must participate and be a part of that.
Yeah.
I agree. I
Um,
agree.
I would like to share an illustration here in terms of that. My
Yes.
one set where my wife and I have, um, I don't know, parented many children, many children, and we had one set in particular, and I guess in particular, um, when the oldest, I believe maybe this was the two oldest sisters that had graduated, and we were coming home from the graduation of the brother. So he would be the third child. And I asked him the question, where where do you think you would be if my wife and I were not in your lives?
Wow.
And without hesitation, our son said, in prison. And I said, no, you
Mm.
wouldn't be in prison. You would be in reformatory, maybe in reformatory school, but not in prison. But without hesitation, he said he would be in prison. The eldest daughter said, I was thinking the very same thing in
Wow.
terms of the question. Today, my our son always wanted to be a policeman. Today, he is a policeman, a firefighter, but a
Right.
policeman,
Right.
and he is a skilled carpenter, you know, because of what
Right.
we did in terms of that. So the community needs to get involved with with the children, and they need to know too not, that they have a voice. So that same set of children said to us, my wife and I would go and could get them on Friday evening to come and help prepare the church, and then Saturday night we would spend time with them, and really late into the night. We will take them home. And one
Right.
day they said to us, we y'all need to come by more often. So they, of course they didn't live with us. Y'all need to come by more often. And as a result of it, we went by through the week more frequently, and would just spend hours with that particular set. We did with the others as well, but
Right. Right.
I'm just saying that one in particular because the fact that my son said he would have been in jail if we were not a part of their lives. And I think we ought to recognize that if God gives you that, puts you in the path, and He really did put us in their path or brought them in our path, however we want to say it. If
Right.
God does that, it's your responsibility. Please be faithful to that responsibility.
Amen.
Yes, yes. All right. Listen what Colin has to say here. And any one of you could reflect on it. True education is training in truth. And the Bible is the starting point for truth. It reveals how to love God and how to love our neighbors. It teaches the true way of life. Would like to chime here.
Absolutely. Professor, you want to go before me? Or okay?
Go ahead, God.
Okay, absolutely. True education definitely is a truth, and we've seen a lot of times stuff that is being passed around as a truth, which is not. All
Right,
right. Um, from our worldview, we get our worldview from the Bible, and of course, the way we see things, we understand that God is truth. He is
right,
truth, right? And because He is truth, what He says can never ever be lie.
right,
And if we are going to train our children and train people in general in education, we need to
right,
understand full well that truth is critical because I don't want to know that what I'm learning is really a lie. I don't want to find that out after because it's like I wasted a lot of my time.
right,
But when you understand the true God and that He has revealed Himself to us and it is true, history has shown that it's true. So in essence, once you understand the truth and you learn about this God who is truth, you're actually learning. And once
right,
you, of course, the Bible tells us the beginning of all knowledge is wisdom. And if you get
right,
there, you just start realizing, oh, wow, God starts revealing Himself more and more to you, and things that you never thought. It's been revealed to you more and more, even as parents, as educators, pastors. We're constantly, God is teaching us constantly when we make ourselves available.
right, right. No, we're almost out of time. I want to hit on one more discussion point before we go. And this is it. How can education be used as an empowerment tool for students? And what strategies do you use as an educator to motivate students to succeed or to bring out the best in students?
Um,
My my
I, oh, go ahead.
my approach to it is that the education of the student, though it begins in the home and begins with the parents, and though the community plays a role in it, at some point in time, the students must take responsibility for their
Right,
education. They
right,
must know that they are in charge of their education. Now, I'm at the university level, and perhaps they would say, well, at the high school level, that's not true. In my own experience at the high school level, it's true as well. Because again, if teachers can come in with the wrong pedagogy and get
mhm,
you going in one direction, which takes you away from where you want to go. Just for example, um, when we were going from entering into high school, we had the opportunity of doing common entrance exam that would allow you to go into more prestigious high school.
right,
The common entrance exam was sat on Sabbath. I didn't go home to my parents and ask my parents if I should take those common. No, I've already know that
not gonna happen.
I do not. I go to church. God says I ought to honor the Sabbath and keep it holy. So
Right,
it wasn't a question. So at some point, the student must realize that his or her education is his or her responsibility. My uh, recognize what your strengths are, recognize what your weaknesses are when it comes to education, and then blend them. You ride on your strengths and you use your strengths to help you with your weaknesses. Math was always my best subject throughout my education. English was always my worst subject and still is my worst subject. I could not get anything less than an A in any math course I took.
Right.
I said when I took my English courses in my undergrad, Lord, I will thank you for just a C. Just give me a C and I'll be thankful. Okay? So that was my responsibility.
Right.
And I needed to do that. And as a result of it, for we are all different, but at the same time, I believe if the individual takes responsibility, he will stop blaming the teacher, the system, parents, whatever. He would look at himself and say, "Am I doing my best? Am I putting forward the best effort that I can put forth?" In terms of that, and you may arrive to a point where I arrived several times during high school is that I don't understand this subject. I'm wasting my time in this subject. Let
Right.
me go and do something else. And I did. And no teacher could have told me otherwise.
Right.
Okay? Take responsibility
Yeah.
for your education.
That's powerful. That's powerful. I can't overemphasize that. And folks, listen to what Professor Flores has said. I recall when I was in school, in university for my undergraduate, um, you know, I realized that there were many persons in my as studying to be pastors. You know, I told my wife, no, then girlfriend, I said, one of the reason you don't see me you know in certain times you might want to see me because I realize that everybody that will be graduating, they will be having the same degree that I have. So I have to make sure that I have something more to sell myself. And as a result, I was involved in a lot of extracurricular activities, try to you know add to my resume, as it were, and add to myself as it relates to what can I bring to the table. And mark you, while I was thinking about that, professor, I didn't really know until now the amount of areas that I was becoming proficient at.
Mhm,
So because I was involved in other areas, in communication department, in this
mhm.
in student government, etc., I was giving myself the opportunity to learn in other
Yep.
areas. So ultimately, um, that point we should not try to run away from it. The student, as students, take responsibility for your education. Don't just blame yourself. Well, this, that, find excuses. Take responsibility. Very profound. The others could chime in now.
Okay. Um, I remember when I went to university, I remember a teacher, one of the professors said to me, he said to the
Mhm.
class, education automatically, a university or college degree automatically puts you in the other category. So
Right.
if you're a lower class citizen, you automatically move to the middle class by having a
Mm,
university or college level education. It's like, what? So yes, because now you will be earning above the minimum wage. So right away, education is also empowering you, right? Putting you in
right.
a better financial position. Um,
Social
but
mobilization.
what I find is that in terms of education, I find that when students are educated, they understand that
All right. Yeah. Let me just add my piece.
Yeah,
Okay. So
go ahead.
I certainly agree with Professor Flowers in his discourse about having the students take responsibility for their education. One of the things I see here is that students, have been able to uplift their lives because of their education. There are students who I have seen who are the only ones to have graduated from high school in their families. And just by doing that, they pretty much change the whole outlook for their families. They break cycles. But
Hmm.
one thing I'd like to talk about is the fact that there are times when we believe, as a society on a whole, that we can only be truly educated if we are pursuing certain types of professions. So, you have to be a lawyer or a doctor or something in that regard. And there are students who may have particular talents, they may be skilled, they may be able to perform certain skills, and they tend to shy away from those skills. They may be good at fixing a car, they may be good at hairdressing, may be good at plumbing, but they shy away because they are, over the years told that if they venture into these fields, they are not too bright. And but I have seen here where I live in Canada that the skills are where the big bucks are, right? And so we have to, allow our students to understand that not because they may not be able to get into law school means that something is wrong with them. Education is not just one dimensional. You can be truly educated by pursuing what you really are talented at, what you are skilled at, and you're still educated. A plumber makes good money and is able to take care of his or her family. So let's, get rid of that old school thought where everybody, when I was going to high school, everybody wanted to be a doctor. And I'm like, no, if everybody becomes doctors, then who is going to fix cars and who is going to do hair and all of those things?
Right.
So, we have to get them to understand these things. And by doing these things, they can break family cycles and fix whole communities.
Powerful.
Can you hear
Yes.
me now?
Yes, sorry about that. I was hearing you, but it was freezing. It was freezing in the background. So definitely, education is not one dimensional. Um,
Mhm.
s- yes, and you have said so much other things. So, Professor Flowers, if you could make your chime in right now, we just got some interruption with the electricity as well as the internet. And
Yes, and I think that situation that occurred just now with the internet, I think I saw my light dip, etc., and so
right,
forth, with the thunder and lightning that's happening,
right,
um, going on. But no, yes, I agree with what's being said about education, that it's not one dimensional. I also, my view is that a person, a student should um, go ahead and pursue academics if they have that ability, and
right,
many of them do, but also pursue a the word just slipped me, but also pursue jobs like um, plumbing and
right,
painting, etc. Because you don't know, um, you may not be employed right away, and that's always my experience.
right,
Well, I was not employed right away when I returned home. Um, I had to wait a few um, months, and I had gotten into computering, and I went and I worked in a computer store for a couple of months. Rather than sitting home doing nothing. So go ahead and get those. Make sure you have those jobs, because there's no guarantee that you will always be you will always be needed in that particular profession. It just may be too crowded. And you may
Right.
just have a few individuals in that profession that is just a little above you, and everybody's
Right.
going to them rather than coming to you, and
Awesome.
so forth. So yes,
Right.
I agree, and that's what I tell my students.
All right.
Even now, I tell my students.
Right,
You know,
right. So we're out of time. We're out of time, and based on what's happening, I don't want us to get disconnected. So you have everyone has shared so much that has been so great in terms of the topic of education. So I'll ask for you to now give your final word of hope to, I guess, educators as well as students. On this topic from your perspective as an educator? We could start with Pastor Peart.
Okay. Um, I just want to say that we are learning, we learn every day,
Right,
and we will never stop learning until we go to the grave. All
mhm.
right. So it is a
right,
part, education is key. We're always learning. We have to learn to adjust. When you get married, you learn to adjust to a wife.
Yeah, yeah.
right,
When you have a baby, you have to learn to adjust to the baby. When you get teenage years, you're constantly learning. When a spouse dies or a parent dies, you have to learn to live without that person. So
right,
learning is lifelong. All right. We're constantly learning. It's not just formal education. We're always learning. Now, I firmly believe that if we treat the educational system, all right, as a community, we can and we will create lifelong learners,
right,
workers who are competent and who will cooperate, as well as critical thinkers who will willingly adapt to changing world, like how we see now in COVID time,
right.
and will indeed for the betterment of the entire community and the world at large.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you. So powerful point. Those points are very salient. All right, Jasan.
For me, my final thoughts. Firstly, to educators, never be afraid to own up to the fact that you just don't have all the answers,
Oh yes.
and be
Right,
willing to learn. Be willing to share with others, and be willing to network. Right? We are not encyclopedias all to ourselves. We don't have all the answers. There may be another teacher out there who can help you. Ask for help. And for students, take responsibility and remember that the Bible says in James 1 verse 5, if anybody lacks wisdom, they should
mm,
ask of God.
right,
So ask God for wisdom, and He has promised that He will impart the wisdom to you to not only do well in school, but to
right.
be able to be educated in all the other aspects of life.
Yes, yes. Awesome, awesome. That's powerful. Thank you so much for that take. Professor
Um,
Flowers?
yes, Larry, and the rest of the panelists, and for those listeners, um,
Yeah,
my thought comes from 2 Timothy 2:15, which says, "Study to show thyself
approved.
prove unto God a workman that needs not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of God." Your education is to the honor and glory of God. And I
Right,
believe if we realize that our education as well as our teaching is to
right,
the honor and glory of God, we would be better educators as well as our students would be better students. What we do is to honor and glory. And the other thing I think I would like to say is, do not compare yourself with anybody else. You are you, individually, you have your strengths, you have your weaknesses, um, and and I agree that we ought to seek each other's assistance in terms of getting help from others. We don't know it all. When I went and I'll just quit and in a moment. When I went to undergrad, I went there with the idea, boy, I can have everything in my head. And one of my professors, I'm doing anatomy, which I enjoyed. One of my
right.
professors said to me, what do you think they have libraries for?" And that changed my perspective. Understand what's going on, utilize your resources, and always remember, put God first.
Awesome, awesome, man. I believe, wow, sitting amongst educators, it's a privilege, and indeed, you have taught me today, and I know that those who have listened and will listen will be truly educated and even be able to craft even a broader scope as it relates to their philosophy of education. So, thank you, panelists, for sharing. As we run out of here, we're going to listen to a song, but just before we do that and play the credits, I see some really powerful point, and I just want to touch on two of those. Roseanne Palmer said, education is multi-dimensional. Yeah. So your education, it's gonna come from different areas. You're in life, your life, that's a classroom. Learn from every experience. And Colin follow through, and he makes this point. Well, it's before. It's education is the key to turn a weakness into a strength. It offers different tools and ways to understand problems and lay ahead of us and help us to resolve them. So that's a powerful point. Many of us perhaps would have come across this one by the author Ellen G. White, and she said, "True education means more than the pursuit of a certain course of study. It has to do with the whole being and with the whole period of existence possible to man. It is the harmonious development of the physical, the mental, the spiritual powers. So it is holistic, and you have been fed with that. So today, don't limit yourself. The only limit is what you think about yourself and what you think you can learn. You can do it. You can do it. This month, we have taken the time to focus on education. You have seen some of the opportunities that we have laid out before you, where you can actually, plug in and learn, whether it is here in the Bahamas, University of the Bahamas, or many of the other schools that are available here, government or private, in Jamaica, in Canada, in the United States of America. Give yourself a treat by telling yourself that, guess what, I am going to enlist myself in one of these schools and learn. Whether it is to, if you're a carpenter, enlist yourself into a school to be a better carpenter. Whatever it is, just learn, because there's no limit to your learning. At Northern Caribbean University, we have a philosophy that we used to say, learning never ends. You'll be sempre, I don't remember that part, but it's learning never ends. And if your learning never ends, your earnings will never end. So just continue to learn and grow. Remember, visit our website, zoomoplive.org. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And please, we want to make sure that you get all the latest updates and live feed as we place them on our channel. So please do subscribe. So on behalf of Kevin Spence, I am Larry Green, and the entire Zoom Hope family, we love you, and we're looking forward to have a great episode again next week. God bless you. And listen to this song by one of our previous guests, Stacia Samuel Nesbeth. And see you next week. Bye-bye.
Sometimes I think I'm in control, and I act so foolishly, facing problems on my own. I don't know what's best for me. My mistakes at times disturb all the plans you have made. Lord, keep me in your will, so I won't be in your way and put me where you want to, not where I wanna be. If I should ask for things I want, just give me what I need. When I complain from time to time, forgive me, Lord, I pray. Lord, keep me in your will, so I won't be in your way. Remind me, Lord, I'm just a glove in which you place your hand. Not my will, but yours be done. Though I don't understand the best laid plans I've made, somehow always go astray. Lord, keep me in your will, so I won't be in your way, and put me where you want to, not where I wanna be. If I should ask for things I want, just give me what I need. When I complain from time to time, forgive me, Lord, I pray. Lord, keep me in your will, so I won't be in your way. I need you, dear Lord, each and every single day, to keep me in your will, so I won't be in your way. Lord, keep me in your will, so I won't be in your way.
Earthside, I've tried it on. My fight is more like a crow. Yeah, I've been broken and I've been hurting. Yeah, I keep searching, but fell